You are listening to Three Kitchens Podcast, hosted by Heather Dyer and Erin Walker. To find our complete catalog of episodes, check out any of your favorite podcast players.
Or our website, threekitchenspodcast.com.
Well, I'm going to get this recording going because I feel like we're throwing around some ideas here, and you've got some plans possibly in the works.
Oh, they're just
And
ideas, no
sorry,
plans.
not even plans. Heather's just
It's a
got
concept
ideas.
of a plan. It's like, does that sound
Heather's,
familiar? We have concepts of plans.
maybe what I'm doing will help you
Oh,
with your
okay.
concept or your plan, or maybe you can just take what I'm doing and do it to the next level
Oh,
because I
this is
have seen other
interesting.
things.
Okay.
So we're sitting here chit-chatting because Easter is on its way. Hippity hoppity, Easter's on its way. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I say the word Easter and it's like my teeth start hurting immediately because I want all the sugar. I want all the treats. I want all the baking. I already had my first bag of malt eggs.
Shut up. You did?
I seriously,
Already?
I found
Oh,
one bag abandoned on a shelf at a grocery store and nowhere else did I see them. So I picked up the one abandoned bag and was like, normally I would question this. But for this,
because it's
I'm
the
because
only one.
it was just abandoned, like sitting next to like, I don't know, canned tomatoes or something. It was totally out of its place. And I was like, oh, these are the Maltesers. And then
Oh, God. I need
and
to
then
go and
when I
look for
went through
mine.
the Easter stuff, it wasn't there. And I was like, where did this bag come from? Well, whatever, I'm buying it.
You, you got lucky.
Exactly.
Erin,
It was a
Erin and
sign.
I like to buy we each buy a bag of these
Yeah.
colored Easter eggs that have like they're like Whoppers on the
Yeah.
inside.
They're like
And
giant whoppers. Mm.
yeah, and oh, they're so good, except they kind of tear up the roof of your mouth.
I was gonna
But
say
they're like
you can't eat anything else but them because you eat too much of them.
and then your stomach hurts and you feel sick. But we both do it
Exactly.
and we usually hide them in our vehicle.
Hmm.
I always keep them in the console of my car. And while I'm driving here and there for the kids, I munch away on them and I don't
Oh yeah.
share.
Yeah.
And one bag per Easter season is usually pretty good.
That's usually enough. But I mean,
Yeah.
like, even just talking about it, my teeth are hurting.
Makes me want them right now.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, of course, I'm going to bring you something sweet and a treat for Easter.
Hmm.
And I have been keeping this one in my back pocket for a while. I don't know when I saved this idea, but it's been a while and I was waiting for the right occasion to bring it out, and I think this is it. So, I am sending you an Instagram link because look at me, I'm all prepared. You don't even have to open it, you just have to look at the picture on the cover when it
Okay.
comes through. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, yes.
So this looks like
Oh, I love this.
it might fall into our category of cake making that doesn't require a whole bunch of fancy decorating because it's done beforehand when you bake it.
It is fancy though.
But it is fancy. So it is this layered sponge cake that you're going to color your batter and you're going to design it on the bottom of your pan. Oh,
If you're watching a video, you can see it.
you
Look at
can,
that as a cake.
it's a cake.
And
Okay,
it's
the
not
one I have
icing.
on the recipe is a Snoopy
Oh,
cake. How
cute.
adorable is that?
That is cute.
And so it looks relatively simple
It does? Oh my
because
God. I don't think it looks simple.
what you do is you're gonna, from what I hear, we'll see if in the second half I'm like, oh yes, it's just like they said, or I come back bald. So, because I've torn all my hair out trying to do what they said. But it's really sounds simple because you take a piece of parchment paper and you put it over top of the image and you draw out on your parchment paper, you trace out what you want, And then you turn it around so it's reversed so that you're not, getting pencil in your batter. And then you've got the outline of where you're going to pipe all these colors of your cake batter. And you pipe these colors out on this piece of parchment. You put it in the bottom of your pan and you let it freeze so that the lines set and don't all mix in. And then you pour the rest of your batter on top in your two cake pans in the oven. It says they bake for
Okay.
10 minutes.
Oh,
Like a
that's quick.
Yeah, they're sponge cakes, so they're going to be light and fluffy. And then the middle layer, because you're leaving it exposed, you're just piping in some whipped cream
Well, you
as your
could probably
filling.
put in
But you
whatever
could
filling you
probably
want.
put whatever filling you
Yeah.
wanted. But I mean, just like a simple filling that you kind of blop, 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 blop all the way around so that it looks pretty from the outside. And it's got that like naked cake thing going on
Mm-hmm.
with a pretty design on top that you didn't have to hopefully spend hours icing. I don't know. I think the complexity depends on what kind of image you make on here. And so I'm thinking I'll do something Easter themed. So maybe a bunny if I'm finding something I can trace easily. White might be hard to achieve, so I'm not sure 100% about that. So maybe something like some colored eggs and a basket and some flowers.
Oh, yeah.
I
I
don't
think
know.
if you're going for white, you're accomplishing that with negative space.
That's
You
what
know
I
what I
kind of
mean?
feel like you would just
I
fill it with
think
batter.
yeah, you would just do the color would be around it to make
Yeah.
the shape.
Yeah.
See, when okay, I see that now because I my thought was like, how do you keep them from just mushing all together?
Yeah.
So, do you have to have a slightly thicker batter to pipe? Like I'm picture like some, well, I don't
I
know. I guess some
don't
cake
really
batters are thicker
know.
and some are thinner. So,
Yes. And
hmm,
this is a classic sponge cake where you're gonna separate, it says 12 eggs. So that is a
yeah.
lot of eggs to make a sponge cake. But you've got your yolks and your sugar and your vanilla in one bowl. And then you're going to whip your egg whites to make them big and fluffy. You're going to put them together and fold it gently. And then you're going to take little bits of the batter and put it into cups and dye it. And then you're going to pipe that out on the bottom. Again, this doesn't need to be like a ton of batter that you're putting in those little cups. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be the
Yeah.
fluffiest part or the part that holds the structure of the cake. It's simply the
It's like a
picture
top
in
layer.
cake. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I've seen those before, I guess I never really saw the cross section. I just saw
Yeah.
the like the top of it, and
Right.
I wondered how because I was picturing it going all the way through, like you're when you cut it,
Oh my
the
Lord.
color, and I was like, well, that's why I thought they would all mush
Yeah.
together and stuff. But now I get it. You're making like a thin layer
Yeah.
on the
I'm
bottom of the
decorating my
pan.
cake
Yeah,
before I bake
yeah,
it.
and then you're freezing it. That's genius.
Yes,
Before
that's what
you.
I read in the instructions. Yeah.
Oh, this is fun.
So, this falls under no icing skills necessary. So I feel like it's a cake for us.
You know what skills I don't really have? Piping skills. I have never, it feels fiddly and like finicky to me to like, okay, which end are you using? How much pressure do you squeeze?
Oh,
How far away from the thing are you're decorating? Like, I feel like that it's something I've never really learned to do.
no, I hate all of those
Well, you better learn to
ideas.
like it.
Well, I mean, like I can hold a bag and follow a line. I've done that. I mean, that's easy. It's like writing happy birthday on a cake.
Oh, I would screw that right up. Like if you put too much pressure and then it goes when you didn't mean
We
for
just
it to.
scrape it off and then you start again.
Actually, speaking of this, remember in
Okay.
our episode with the baking scraps,
Yes.
Lisa or Christina, I can't remember who, one of them recommended, like she said, when she does something where she's got to write on a cake,
Right.
she writes it with the icing onto parchment paper and then
Yes.
freezes it and then
Just transfers it.
transfers it, get it off in one nice piece and put it onto the cake. Like do it with chocolate or something that sets nicely and then just put it on. You don't have to pipe it directly on the cake.
That's smart. See, I
Yes.
worked a job as a kid at a bakery in a grocery store. And
Oh.
for those poor people who came and got the last minute cakes that they didn't pre-order from the trained bakers, would
Mm.
end up with somebody like me writing happy birthday lopsidedly going down the side of their cake.
Yeah.
And let's hope their kid's name doesn't have too many letters because ain't nobody centering this good anymore. But, you
It's
know,
like writing on a chalkboard. You start here
yeah.
and then it goes up to the right.
Or
It goes up,
down.
down. Your letters get smaller as
Yeah.
you go.
All of a sudden, the chalkboard ends and your words start stacking. So we'll see. This is
Good
my
luck.
hope that we will have some fun at Easter with a possibly easy, impressive looking cake.
Oh, I really do hope that it's easy because I want to make a cake like this after I hear all
Yeah.
your
And
tips and tricks that you learn. I totally want to make that.
so going back to the baking scraps, so this came from Madison at the Squeaky Mixer is where I'm getting this recipe from. And she's also got recipes for making bûche Noël, so the log cakes where you
Mhm.
make a pattern on the log before you roll it up so that your
Oh,
sponge, because it's a
yes.
sponge cake as well, right?
I've
And
seen
you
that.
roll it up and you don't even have to worry about decorating it because it looks amazing. And I was
Oh,
successful. I felt successful about that sponge cake. So
oh, it was
here's
totally
hoping,
successful.
here's hoping I can pull off a second sponge. That's why I'm taking these skills that I was pushed into learning. Thank you,
Pushed.
Lisa and Christina. And now I am going to make sponge cake ledoux.
The great thing about that, using it for a rolled cake like that, is that now your bûche de Noël, which is technically a Christmas cake, Noël is Christmas.
Hmm.
Now, not that you couldn't have eaten it other times, but now you can give it a spring theme or a Valentine, put Valentine's hearts on it, or do like,
She had one that had
I
like
don't know.
strawberries on it and then like a
Oh,
strawberry cream filling with little, like with strawberries in it. And I was like, brilliant.
yes, so
So,
fun, totally fun, love it.
all right. Well, wish me luck.
Good luck.
Okay. Come with me, Heather, on a journey into the land of sponge cake.
Okay. This is
Now,
unusual to start out because I haven't even seen.
you haven't seen the
You know what's
pictures?
funny? I haven't seen the cake. I have eaten it, but this is so ridiculous. Anyone listening will be like, "What?
How
You've
did
eaten it
you?
but not seen it?"
It was
I've
one of
seen
those
slices.
blindfolded things.
I know.
You just opened your mouth and I shoved it in. No. I did this all over again and made the second one.
Oh, it looks so nice. I think it looks, well,
I've
listen, you can read
learned
it.
some things.
Okay. Now that I have a visual.
Now you know what it looked like. Sponge cake. So this is a cake that doesn't have any leavening agent in it other than the fluffy beaten egg whites. So you're taking, you're separating your eggs, you're mixing together one set of ingredients, you're whipping your egg whites to make them frothy over here, and then you're gently folding together that batter so that it is spongy and puffy. And it definitely has like air and lift to it before you
Mhm.
put it in your cake pan, you bake it, you pray to the cake gods, and then when it's done, it should be a nice light cake. Painting out of the cake batter, I would say was a great idea but you need the right sponge cake recipe and you have to be comfortable making a sponge cake. So if this is like, I don't really know what sponge cake's about, I'm nervous about the whipping of egg whites, or it's not the simple thing that I was like, oh, maybe this is a way to not decorate cakes. No.
Uh-huh. Oh,
So the first one that I made was a big batch. It was a triple layer 12 egg sponge cake. And working with that amount of ingredients was a challenge
hmm.
because it was so much batter and so much, mixing and stuff. And I don't know, sometimes those big batches are kind of intimidating to work with. So when I did this first recipe, it recommended that I bake it in three 9-inch pans at 375 degrees Fahrenheit
That's
for
hot, isn't it, for a cake?
yeah. So
Okay.
red flag number one.
Ah,
Yes, I agree. I think that's hot. Even the fact that you pointed that out, just listening to me talk about it is, yeah, more thinking than I did when I looked at it. But it said like 8 to 10 minutes and you'll have this layer of cake baked. And I was like, wow, that's a really short amount of time.
maybe if it's very thin?
It it wasn't that
Oh,
thin, right?
okay.
Because it was 12
Hmm.
eggs worth of batter
Oh,
divided by 3 pans. Like it was still like a hunkin' layer of cake.
yeah.
So once you've got this batter mixed together, so you've got your fluffy egg whites, your egg yolks, and your flour, you've combined them together, carefully folding them until it's all evenly dispersed, blah, blah, blah. And then I got some ramekins out and put some food coloring paste in them, and then a little bit of batter in each of them and mixed it up to make my colors for the bottom of my cake, which was going to flip over and be the top of my cake, hopefully, when I was done. So
Right.
this worked out totally good.
Hmm.
I would say the second recipe I used was just a better batter. So writing and putting this on the bottom of the cake pan was such a great idea. It worked out really easily. But I would say the second batter that I made was a little less runny. And so it held its shape on the pan better when I piped my pattern onto the parchment that was on the bottom of my pan.
That's what I was worried about when just the idea of piping it. I was like, how is it not going to ooze into like run
Yeah,
together?
not sure. It was runnier. It kind of a little bit more.
The
Then
technical term
that's
is milk.
look it up. It's French. So so the second time I made the batter, it sat into my little Ziploc bags much easier. It like held its spot on the pan easier. And then once you've piped that bottom part on, you just want to carefully you put the rest of the batter that's going to go in the pan. I just used like a piping bag, but you could have like a large Ziploc bag, whatever you want,
Mhm.
and just kind of put it on there so you're not disturbing it. Between the colored layer and then that cake layer, it sat in the freezer for about 10 minutes just to kind of like, it didn't set. It was still sticky. It wasn't frozen, but it just kind of congealed it a little bit more, I would say, so that it didn't immediately
That makes
turn into
sense.
nothing. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So that definitely totally worked. And so the second batter that I made this with was a 6 egg batter to make 2 layers. And I was like, totally achievable. So I piped this into the pans. It said 375, 10 minutes. And I'm thinking, I don't know about this. So I popped my cakes into the oven. 10 minutes went by. They definitely weren't done after 10 minutes. I would say it was closer to 20, 25 minutes.
That
And
sounds more
so
reasonable.
seems like a more reasonable amount of time.
Mhm.
However, when I popped the cakes out of the pan and took off the parchment, my cakes were My cakes were brown on the bottom,
Oh, yeah,
which
because it was too hot.
it was too hot.
Mm.
And it still wasn't totally cooked through because that top part was still sticky
Oh,
as it cooled down and it stuck to my cooling rack. It was
oh.
such a disaster, Heather. Oh my gosh. So I scraped
Yeah.
off the part of the cake. I cut off what was uncooked. The part that was overcooked at the bottom that was brown, I was like, well, nobody wants to see this, so whatever. So I made a quick cream cheese icing because I was like, I'm not sharing this with Heather. This is fail cake. I'm going to serve it to my guest that's coming over tonight. It's just going to look like a cake. It tasted fine. Again, the two layers, all three layers had unbaked cake on them that I ended up scraping and cutting off. It was,
Hmm.
it's a lesson. And
A
so
12
this
egg, a
the
12 egg
a
mistake.
12 egg lesson, which depending on where you're listening to us from, could
Yeah.
be quite a costly lesson, to be
In
honest.
this economy?
In
That's
this,
like my
yeah,
favorite saying these days, no matter what the thing is in this economy. But in the case of groceries, that actually applies.
it totally applies.
The last thing you
So,
want to do is waste a bunch of food you had to buy to make the thing.
well, this is the thing. I was like, either way, we're eating this cake. Everyone enjoyed it. It was tasty. It should have been baked at a different temperature, was my decision. And it was just too much cake for an inexperienced cake hating person like me to deal with. It's like, who bakes a 12 egg cake? Not me anymore. Warning signs.
Good to know.
So then I went into my trusty Better Homes and Gardens cookbook. That's like the MacGyver of cookbooks. It's got everything from baking to canning to chicken to beef to how to cook a turkey. It's like your grandma's do-all cookbook,
Hmm.
but it's mine. And in there was a recipe for an orange sponge cake. And it was only 6 eggs. And I was like, yes, please, I can get on board with this.
Who knew you had to judge the cake recipe by the number of
Oh,
eggs involved? And I guess some kind of new
just,
standard.
yeah, just be aware that the number of eggs in a sponge cake now will get me very critical. So this orange sponge cake, 6 eggs, pretty much the same process as the other sponge cake, as I'm learning every sponge cake is. You separate your yolks from your whites. In this one, it mixed in orange peel and orange juice, as well as vanilla, sugar, and flour into the egg yolks. And I ran out of orange, of course, orange juice. So I added some lemon juice as they suggested. So it was kind of like a mixture between lemon and orange flavored on
Mm.
our end. And then in the egg whites, it was cream of tartar and half a cup of granulated sugar. I left my whisk going to froth up the egg whites and beat them into nice fluffiness. And when they got to like the soft peak stage, and so that's the part where I stop the mixer, I take the mixing attachment out, and I lift it up and turn it upside down and see what that peak on the end of my whisk does. So if it
Okay.
stays standing up, you've got firm peaks, and that's
Hmm.
where we're trying to get to. But at the soft peak stage is when we want to start adding the sugar to it. So you should lift it up and it should do the little like curl over, kind of like an ice cream cone.
Little
I've,
droop.
I've got
Hmm.
great, for everybody watching on video,
Yeah.
look at me, I'm amazing. Me and my finger. Okay, so
I'm just picturing like a little hat
yeah,
holding
just a little
over.
curled little hat with a pom pom on the end.
Yeah.
So when it's at that soft peak stage, then you want to slowly add in your sugar. And so because you've got this kind of balance going between air and your yolks beating, or your whites being beaten, and everything's kind of delicate, I want to say at this point. I was really careful about adding that sugar, like sprinkle, sprinkle, and then like let it go. I counted to eight, then sprinkle, sprinkle, and then I let it go and I counted it. So I did that for a while just to make sure that adding the sugar, I didn't break what was going on
Yeah.
with my
Like if
egg
you just
whites.
dump a bunch of sugar in there, it's gonna just flatten everything out.
Yeah, like I'm
Is
kind of
it? I
afraid
don't
I'm
know.
gonna end up with like, remember when I made mayonnaise and you had to whisk it? And if you fucked that up, your
It was
mayo
broken.
broke and it separated. And I was like, oh my God, what if that happens? I can't deal with that. If that happens, this cake is never happening.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Ain't nobody. Definitely
Time
not
or
me.
emotional bandwidth.
No,
Like, I don't have it in me to deal with the stress of
no.
breaking the thing. Okay.
And honestly, I'm on my 18th egg here. I don't even have the budget to deal with that anymore.
No.
This is the most expensive thing I've made on the podcast so far. Okay, so I don't think it's that bad, but I joke. Okay. So I got my sugar mixed into my egg whites, again, popped out my mixer, checked out the attachment. I've got my straight up hat.
Now it's a
Now it's a point.
nice.
And I'm like, yay, this is what I want. And so now the process is you take about a cup of those egg whites and put them into your egg yolk mixture and you mix it together, folding and carefully, all that stuff. Once you've got that mixed together, you're then adding all that egg yolk and everything back into the bowl that has the whites, and doing that final fold was the process that I followed.
This is a very laborious cake. Like, what a lot of work,
Yeah.
don't you think? Yeah.
You know how people, okay, side note, everyone's always asking, like, do you like pie or cake better? And I'm always kind of like, I don't know, pie or 100% I like pie better now. My opinion has been swayed based on my experience with this.
Well, and it's also like, well, do you mean do I have to make it? Because my opinion might be different.
But I'm so fussy
If
about the
somebody
cake
else makes
too.
a very good
I
cake, I
guess.
don't know. Cake is too, you're right, it's too fussy.
It's
Because
too
sometimes the
fussy.
icing's not good or the icing to cake ratio is
Yeah.
wrong.
The second time I did this, the original recipe recommended that I do this whipped cream filling where it was whipped cream on the edge and then like a filling in the middle. And at this point, I'm ready to call it in and order a cake from anybody. And I was like, well, I'm going to make the
Cheater.
whipped cream. And then this filling, I just quickly made the roasted berry jam that we learned from Deborah from her cookbook on rising that we interviewed over a year ago.
Oh, wow. Yum.
Crazy, but
That's
all about
such a,
brunch. Mm.
oh, so good.
I have that jam recipe pasted on my fridge because I use it
Oh,
so often. Like when I make waffles, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to toss all my frozen berries into a pot and make this roasted berry jam. So I made that and tossed it in the middle. I'm going to say too much of it, probably,
mm.
but there you go.
And whipped cream.
And whipped cream was just kind of around the edge to seal it in. I don't know. The cake kind of
Mm.
collapsed in the whipped cream, and I was like, ugh, whatever. Um, One thing or some of the things that I thought about this, the sponge cake tastes better the first day you make it.
Mm.
I do really like a sponge cake over a traditional white cake, I would say, in terms of like flavor and texture. I kind of like the sponge cake better. So if I was going to make a sponge cake, if I was going to make a cake for any reason in the future, I would probably make a sponge cake again, even though it takes a little bit of labor because I like the crumb of it better. I will never make a 12 egg cake. It's sponge cake ever again, in case you're curious about where I stand on that, if I haven't been firm enough.
No.
Um, when I was making the pattern on the bottom with the colors, the fineness of the lines in the words that I wrote, that was tricky. I would say go for big images, which is kind of what we see on her Instagram page where I was inspired by this originally. Because then, if like a little piece pulls off, because it doesn't always separate perfectly when you're pulling off your parchment, I'm going to say go for big blocked images rather than fine lines with what you're making on there. And the second time I made it, instead of making it in cake pans, because I found it really hard to like draw with the rim of the pan like up high, and my hand was shaking. It was all sorts of So instead, the second time I did this, I used springform pans because then you can just take off the bottom and it's flat, and you can like write right next to it without having to like hold your arm up, and it made it easier for
Good tip.
people like me.
And if you want to get close to the edge, it's a little easier to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It worked a lot easier that second time. And then instead of greasing the sides of the cake pan, I just cut strips of parchment and put them around so that it didn't stick to the sides. And I thought it did great. That was my sponge cake. I made it twice. You ate it once. And I shall never make a cake on this podcast ever.
You heard it here, everybody. You heard it.
And this
She's
was a
done.
very similar cake because I think it was a sponge cake that I made when I made my Yule log.
Hmm.
And
You and sponge cakes need a little couples therapy or something.
I think
Like,
we need the whole absence makes the heart grow stronger.
oh, there you
'Cause
go.
goodbye. All right. So
Goodbye. Okay.
critique the cake.
I was really impressed that, and I told you, I was like, wow, you're writing on it? Like, that is brave. Because, like you said, that's kind of like that the fine lines.
Yeah.
That was impressive, and it worked. It looked really great.
You could read
Like,
it.
you
It
could
was
read it. It
legible.
looked good. It was nice. It didn't look like a chicken scratched it. Like, it
I
looked really
did
good.
I did trace. See? I have my
Yeah.
tracing papers that I went off of. So
Yeah. See, that's smart. That's what you do.
I did not freehand it.
No, no, I wouldn't think so. Um, so I think in terms of the art, I think you did a great job and it worked out probably. I can't say better than I expected because I didn't really think enough about it to have an expectation. I wasn't sitting around going, I wonder what Erin's art is going to look like. I was just like, oh, I guess I'll just wait and see. And then I forget until it appears. But I'm very impressed with it. The cake itself, I thought was really delicious. I like the orange in there. I thought it was really yummy. Um, and the filling, I'm not like big on whipped cream, but
I
the
like
jam,
that it wasn't a bunch of whipped cream.
yeah, yeah, a little bit is good. Kind of balanced it out. I thought overall it was like really delicious, and I thought, I mean, it was a cake with a design. That is what you set out to do, right? Like it wasn't a fail. I can see how the first one sounds
Yeah.
like that. And I saw a picture that was like, what the heck? What happened to it in the end?
There were some questionable photos that got traded back
Yeah.
and forth, but yeah,
Yeah, but the second version of it, I thought it
yeah.
looked great. I
My
thought it was
family said it was much better with the cream cheese icing. They were
Oh,
much bigger fans of the first cake I made simply because cream cheese icing makes everything delicious. So when in doubt,
that's true.
it's a
That's
good
true.
plan B. So yeah, I don't think they loved whipped cream in it either.
I thought it was
It
just
was
like
kind of,
unnecessary, I
it
guess.
was mid.
Mid. Yeah,
It was
mid.
mid, whatever that means. Teenage children.
At least they didn't call it skibbity because I think that would not be good.
Ooh, I think that is bad. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I think. Anyway, I think this is really fun to hear the process, even though clearly it was frustrating. And
It took a
I
lot
mean,
more of my juice than I had. But I had a good amount of time to do it in. So, you know, if you're looking to take on a cake challenge, go for it. If you're looking for something that might be simple, just keep flipping.
yeah,
Go to your store and order something. I think I definitely learned some things. So if you can take away from the tips, and I have put the 6 egg cake recipe up on our blog because I think, and then I'll sort of add all of my tips under the zhuzh it up section at the bottom, um, to hopefully help you avoid some of the mistakes that I made along the way.
I feel like, you know how you were saying do like bigger design?
Mm.
Maybe it would be fun just to do like a big heart in the middle. Or like
Oh,
just maybe
yeah.
do like one thing the first time
Hmm.
you do it and just
Yeah.
try and see how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I would try it for sure because
Hmm.
I do think it looks really cool. And when
Hmm.
you see what real cake artists, like that one that you were looking at,
Yeah.
when you see what they accomplish with that, it's really cool.
Now you have the it helps humble you. Ah, I could do that. Oh,
Yeah,
maybe I can't.
that's what social media is good for, making us
Hmm.
all think that we can do things. And
Yeah.
then we find out the truth.
Yeah. How to put yourself in your place. But, that's
Yeah.
okay. I know cakes aren't my forte. I'm really glad that I gave this a go. I definitely appreciate a sponge cake. I definitely do. But
Mhm.
but yeah, we're gonna have to take a break.
Yeah. Well, we've now had two cakes for Easter, two cake episodes.
Yeah.
Maybe our listeners want a break too. Maybe they want something else. So we'll do something else next time.
Okay.
Okay.
I like it.
All right.
Well, thanks for coming along on this and helping me learn more. Always learning.
That's what we're here for.
Exactly. And now for the fine print. Links to recipes and other things we talked about in this episode can be found in the show notes or on our website, www.threekitchenspodcast.com. Come say hello on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, YouTube, and TikTok. We'd love to connect. And if you enjoy the show, pass it on. Word of mouth is the #1 way people learn about new podcasts. Thank you so much for listening.